Hey, everybody, how are you doing? I want to extend a thank you tonight to Meg Campbell for tonight's topic on how not to get discouraged when literally everything is going wrong. If you are on the live, give me a hashtag live. If you're on the replay, give me a hashtag replay and let me know that you are out there. So, let me just start off by saying, hey, Meg, how are you? Thank you for this topic. My life personally is very much of the if you give a moose a muffin kind of life. Anything that can go wrong is likely going to go wrong. And I don't really look for trouble, but I'm more often like shocked if something works right on the first try than I am if I, have obstacles to overcome. In fact, I would say, most people think, oh, you're Haley, everything must go right for you. And I'll be honest when I say, hi, I'm Haley. I am the master at dealing with shit when it happens. So this plays out in pretty much most aspects of my life, no matter how carefully I try to plan things out. So discouragement really for me is just, it's the, oh, right, yeah, I was kind of expecting things to break kind of moment. A lot of people, there are people who are like, yeah, my life just flows and it's beautiful and it all works as designed. Y'all, I'm here to tell you, I do digital marketing for small businesses. We do websites. I used to do technology, IT development. I was literally that engineer who would go from testing to development back to testing. And it didn't matter what platform I was on. I could literally walk into a lab and the test bed or the system that I was working on testing would like literally fall over dead. I was the world's best tester in a lot of ways because I almost never even had to lay hands on the system. Because you can better bet your bottom dollar that if it was possible for the system to literally fall over in a flaming heap of poo and people not even be able to boot it, I was the last person to touch that system. And a lot of my clients will actually laugh because they're like, well, you're the tech girl. You're the one who always figures stuff out. And I'm like, yeah, the reason I figure stuff out is because I'm always that girl who everything I touch, I expect to break. Every once in a while, I actually get lucky and I manage to like hit something and it hits out of the park and it actually works. And I'm kind of more shocked when things like work the first time than that they don't. So how do you manage like discouragement or, trying not to get discouraged when you're just trying to get a certain amount of stuff done in a day when literally everything seems to be blowing up? Well, first of all, I think it's a question of resetting expectations. Right now, Meg, you've got kids doing school from home. It is a crazy, wacky, difficult time in everybody's lives. My son did school from home from February until August. And he's like, I never want to do this whole, do school from home thing ever again. And we were lucky enough that we had a tutor and we were going through and we were doing tutoring several days a week. And the kid was getting a ton of support. So, let me just first of all say, right now, we as a culture and as a country and as a world have tons of chaos going on. You've got to give yourself grace for getting stuff done right now because there's so much chaos going on. One of the things that I had to learn very much with my oldest because of all of the psychiatric issues, all of the hospitalizations, all of the calls from social workers, all of the stuff, is that, some days I am just going to want to curl up in a corner and be a little ball of jelly and just like, ugh. And sorry if I'm being too real with you guys. But, and who has had that moment and those days of wanting to curl up like a ball of jelly because nothing you touch works? I'll raise my hand because, there were days with my daughter in and out of the hospital. There's been days with my son, with, doing school from home, all of that. And it makes getting stuff done in our businesses a million times harder, like a million times harder. So we have to give ourselves grace to understand that getting stuff done when we're dealing with, virtual schooling, and we're dealing with chaos, and we're dealing with, a global pandemic, and people are not behaving rationally, and we've got so much stress going on. The first thing to do, I think, when shit breaks and it goes to hell in a handbasket, is to give ourselves grace. Not that you put up with stuff. I mean, things happen. It's not that you have to put up with incompetence with the people around you, or if you hire something or pay for something, it's not that you shouldn't expect to receive the services that you're paying for. But I do believe that if we give ourselves and the people we're working with a little bit more breathing room, magic starts to happen. And, it's not easy to give ourselves a little bit more breathing room. And I look at my husband sometimes, and he's one of those people who is just not the most patient person in the world. He can be patient, but he's not necessarily like the most patient person in the world. And one of the things that I have very much had to condition myself with in the last few years is just patience in dealing with people, patience in dealing with social workers, patience in dealing with medical students who want to call me and ask me 900 questions about my daughter. Patience with customers who call and they ask me the same questions for the 50th time in a row. And there is a certain amount of, blessing and releasing and just moving on that I find really has to start happening, that we really have to bless the situation, that we have to say, thank you for saying that. And, thank you for sharing that with me. Or, look, I know that the kids have gone batshit crazy today. Today is just one of those days where they're going to go batshit crazy. Mom's just going to have a little extra glass of wine or whatever it is that mom does. Or mom is going to go lock herself in the bathroom and give herself some me time and give herself some grace and some love and some caring. And this boils down to something that I was talking about the other day. You can't pour from an empty cup. You can't take care of your business if you're not taking care of yourself. And the discouragement in business also, I think, boils down to you've got to take care of yourself when you kind of hit that wall, because you're going to feel discouraged at times. There's going to be times where customers say no. There's going to be times where we do things in our business and nothing goes right. I have had days where I'm working on tech stuff and literally every single thing I touch goes to pot and back. And it's learning to give ourselves love. It's learning to disassociate our value from what's happening around us. Thank you, Aida. Yes. And I am so sorry that everything that has been going wrong with you. I mean, it is just devastating. You are not how much money you're making. You are not, your value is not measured by whether your kids are behaving. Your value is not measured by, your husband is sick or your husband is in a bitchy mood. Or in my case, my value is not measured by the fact that, I have a kid with a severe psychiatric issue. severe. It doesn't make me less of a person. So when we start disassociating that and putting ourselves in that place of love and caring and, really giving ourselves grace, it really gets a lot easier to not be as discouraged by the crazy stuff. Um, and accept that things are going to go wrong. And that, if something didn't work one way, it might work another. Um, and there are days when we're doing stuff where literally nothing goes right. Like the other day, I went outside and I was planting flower bulbs. And I discovered that I still have problems with orthostatic blood pressure issues, which I've had since I had bariatric surgery. And it made me feel like crap for the rest of the day. And what I had to do was give myself time and space to relax, to recover from doing stuff that I knew I probably shouldn't have done in the first place. And, give myself love and go, okay, well, maybe I am just not going to be able to do yard work for a while longer, maybe ever. And doing anything that involves leaning over is probably a really bad idea for me. Because blacking out's just not real cool. And it's giving yourself that love and compassion every time. And if that becomes the default behavior, it gets easier to say, okay, it didn't work this time. I'll find another way to do it. Okay, I stabbed myself in the finger. That was definitely not what I wanted to have happen. Curse, and then bless yourself and forgive yourself for having made a mistake and move on. Aida, I know that you've had COVID go through your house. You've had everybody get sick, end up in the hospital, and, the financial consequences that are happening as a result of that. Tremendously stressful, right? But it doesn't make you a bad person for needing to make money or find ways to make money to cover expensive medical treatments. Work with people to find a way to, get more clients, to do things that you need to do in order to get to those medical treatments. And there are days where we're going to feel low, and there are days where we're going to feel sad. And there are days where we're going to have steam coming out of our ears, and accept that that is normal. I think too often we put the happy-go-lucky, smile on our face. And yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, my whole filter has been broken for like 3 weeks since dealing with the social workers at the hospital my daughter's in. Um, you know, give yourself time and space. I've definitely had the Mom of the Year award. One of my favorite Mom of the Year award experiences, Meg, was when I only had 3 kids. It was when David was still a toddler. He was about maybe 2 years old, 18, somewhere between 18 months and 2 years old. And I came home from work and I was trying to cook dinner, and the 3 kids, Laura, Zena, and David, were fighting, and they were screaming, and they wouldn't stop. They would not stop. And I told them to sit at the table and sit down and shut up and be quiet. And they wouldn't. And they were screaming and they were yelling. And I had my back to them because I was trying to cook dinner and I was trying to cut stuff. And so I had a knife and the cutting board, and I'm sitting there cutting, and I hear screaming, screaming, screaming. And I take the knife and I bang it on the cutting board. And I'm like, shut up. And then, kids, screaming, 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 screaming. I'm like, shut up. Just stop it. Right? Mother of the Year. Well, finally, I beat the knife on the cutting board. I'm like screaming at the top of my lungs. And I'm like, just shut up. Dead silence. Thank God, right? They finally listened. Well, then I hear a thump. And I hear the words, "Mommy, David's bleeding." And by this point, I'm just like, I don't want to hear it. And I'm screaming at the top of my lungs. And I have this like absolute moment of just stop. I don't care if anybody's bleeding. We're not going to the ER. We're not doing anything. I was livid. I was just screaming from the rooftops. And I didn't turn around and look at the kids to see what was going on. And dead silence for about 15 seconds. And I'm like, that's really odd. So I finally turn around and look over at the kitchen table, and David, who was my now 17-year-old, had fallen and hit the table right here. I since figured out what happened. And of course, you guys know eyebrows, if you cut them, bleed profusely. Mom of the Year award. So I called my husband, and I had to get my husband to come home and watch the two older ones. And I took the 18-month-old to the emergency room to go get his eyebrow stitched back together again. And they glued him, and he's got a scar there, and he's fine. But, you know, we all have those mother of the year moments where we get really impatient and we get frustrated. And I look back at that, you know, and I look at it with shame and horror. And then on the other hand, I'm like, you know what? They were misbehaving. They were intentionally picking fights with each other. You know, and were they not picking fights with each other, my son probably wouldn't have fallen and bumped his eyebrow. You know, so it's just one of those things where we just have to give ourselves some grace and forgiveness when we screw up, when we get frustrated, when we get discouraged, and, you know, give ourselves some space. It's not about being perfect. None of us is perfect. I mean, I'm not perfect, and I don't ever claim to be perfect. But it's about giving ourselves grace in our lives and in our businesses to embrace that imperfection and understand, you know, hey, I could have handled that better. I could have been more mature about that. You know, absolutely, right? But as a factual matter, it happened. I can't take words back after I've said them. So I've gotten a lot better at not saying things when I feel them. And it's amazing how much that diffuses a situation. Sometimes it's just not saying, you know, the obvious, you know, when things are really stupid. But you have to give yourself grace. You have to give yourself love, and you have to give yourself permission for that grace, because being an entrepreneur is stressful. Being an entrepreneur, you know, has anybody ever felt stressed about being an entrepreneur and not having a regular 9-to-5 job? And, you know, your income is not 100% stable, and it's got its ups and it's got its downs and it's got all that kind of stuff, right? So we've added a whole other extra level of freedom, but we also add other subtle, you know, difficulties to the entire process, and whole other layers of stress that people with a traditional 9-to-5 job just don't understand. You know, it has taken years, literally years, for my husband to come and appreciate the advantages that come out of me being a business owner. You know, it is a very different mindset, and the way that you approach finances and the way that you approach life is a little bit different when you're a business owner, because, you know, you have to manage your money quite differently. So, you know, you are introducing a whole other level of stress, and we are ultimately, as business owners, as entrepreneurs, we're responsible for the outcome. You know, when you own a business, there's nobody else to blame for something not working quite right. You know, ultimately the buck stops with you. So that added, I'm sure, a whole other level of stress today for Meg, trying to get stuff done. And the kids are not cooperating, and you're dealing with virtual school, and all of the things happen. And it's really not easy, but you have to understand you are not alone. You are not the only one in this crazy boat. We as entrepreneurs have, wear a special kind of crazy hat, and we swim in a special kind of crazy boat, and we ride in a special kind of crazy lake, on a crazy ocean, that people with a regular job just don't understand, because they look at what we have as freedom and that it's easy, when ultimately, because you are having to make so many decisions and you are ultimately so accountable for what happens or doesn't happen, and it materially impacts your family. And if you didn't do something today, it affects what happens in your family tomorrow. And that makes a big, real difference to your family. Yeah, exactly. And this is true, Aida. Being an entrepreneur, when, you are in a stressful situation, when you've got a sick family member, is both easier and harder, right? So for me, it's been a blessing and a curse while dealing with my daughter, for much the same reason. If I'm not in front of people and I'm not going to networking meetings and I'm not talking to people, I'm not building my pipeline. Which means if I'm not building my pipeline, I'm not building in clients, because clients don't just come to me super quick. They're going to decide to come to me for coaching, but it can take them 2 years to decide to work with me. Same for a website. People will call and they'll ask how much it costs. And it may take them 6 months to a year to save up that money to be able to afford to hire me. So if I'm not visible now, that may affect my ability to eat in 6 to 9 months. So, you're not just losing an opportunity for tomorrow, but you're losing that opportunity even further down the road. And it adds a special flavor and a special type of stress to the situation, that is very unique to entrepreneurs. And it's not necessarily easy to deal with. And this goes back to my whole thing of why self-care is so important, right? Because we are so stressed, because we do put so many demands on ourselves, because we are requiring ourselves to perform at such a high level. Many people would rather choose to work at McDonald's and the stability of McDonald's than face the, instability and the complications of being an entrepreneur, because we have ups and downs, and we have good days and we have bad days, and we have days that work really well for sales, but if you can't replenish your inventory, then you're not going to be able to have products to sell next week at the next show, right? So it's a unique form of stress that people that have a job don't understand. They don't understand, that you are in charge of marketing, and you are in charge of production, and you are in charge of operations and billing and where the money is. And then the other thing too is people don't always understand that when you're a small business owner, you may not have unlimited amounts of money or unlimited amounts of reserves to go do things, because sometimes people look at you as being super wealthy or having access to far more money than you do. So it's a very two-edged sword. But it also grants you a certain level of freedom that you wouldn't have otherwise. I will tell you, I would have never survived the situation with my oldest daughter, with her bopping in and out of hospitals so fast, the number of doctors' calls, the number of calls with social workers, just the sheer amount of chaos that has come into my life in dealing with my daughter for the last 5 years, because we've had 18 hospitalizations. And she's been hospitalized for over 10 months at this point, in this latest hospitalization. So, the amount of chaos that comes and trying to manage that really is much easier when you're an entrepreneur, but it's also much harder, because you still have to generate sales. You still have to go out and go get clients. You still have to go out and go talk to people, even if you don't feel like it. I mean, there are days, guys, where I put on lipstick and I'm out here doing lives, and I can tell you that there are days where I feel like absolutely, cutting and running, and going the other way and not doing it because I'm just not up for it that day. And you know what you do is you just put on the lipstick and you turn on the ring lights and, you know, you smile and you do it. You go to that next show, you go to that next networking meeting, you know, you put on that great dress or that pair of high heels, play some great music. You know, in my case, I have a Dr. Pepper, and, you know, it's really hard. And yeah, I mean, Aida, losing your father-in-law and having, you know, to pay for funeral expenses and not being in a position that was great to start with, and then dealing with your husband's health and your own health is very, very stressful, right? But on the other hand, you're not getting calls from the boss going, hey, why are you not at work today? Well, you're not at work because you're dealing with a family situation that you didn't invite, and you didn't provoke that. You didn't start that. So it's not your fault. And you have to give yourself a lot of love and a lot of grace. You know, accept things for what they are, because they're not easy. What you're going through right now, Aida, is very, very hard. What so many entrepreneurs in this group right now are going through is very, very hard. People have lost their jobs and they're just now starting their businesses, or women are dealing with being the primary caregiver of young children who are working at doing virtual school when we didn't choose to homeschool these kids. My kids, I never chose to homeschool my kids for a reason. Y'all, I love my kids. I never wanted to be their teacher. That's just not who I am. And yet I had to do that for 6 months with my 13-year-old. And it was tough, you know, being supportive and loving and doing all the mommy things when that is not easy, you know, getting, you know, good at prayer, you know, faith, whatever your faith tradition is, prayer works, you know, and understanding, yeah, exactly. This doesn't last forever. This is just a blip. You're going to figure out how to deal with it, because you always do figure out how to deal with it. It just isn't pretty in the short term. And that's part of life, and it's part of being an entrepreneur. You know, we get double extra doses of it being an entrepreneur. And, you know, that love, that prayer is so important. So I hope that this helps, Meg, and I hope that it helps for you, Aida. I mean, I know that like what you guys are going through right now is kind of crazy. I mean, we've had our own fair shares of crazy around here. Lately, I've been working on taming the nuts. So anyway, I am going to do a card pull for you guys. I have cards. This is the Love Your Inner Goddess, which I think is appropriate right now. Yeah, you can't teach kids either. Going to school was your break, right? Yeah, I never chose to be a school teacher. I mean, it's not that I'm not highly educated, y'all. I have 2 bachelor's degrees and a computer and a master's, but I've been a Girl Scout leader for 16 years, and I love doing that kind of thing. I do not love sitting with my kid trying to figure out math, which is really funny because I'm an engineer with an MBA. My undergraduate degrees, in case you guys were wondering, were Spanish literature and computer science. So I'm going to stir up the cards, and I'm going to pull a top one and a bottom one, unless somebody tells me they need the middle one. And, you know, do that as a little bit of inspiration for you guys. You know, and I know that this is so far off the topic of digital marketing, you know, but this is being real, and this is being a business owner. So we're going to pull a card. Tell me top or bottom. And let me know which one you would like. Yeah, not today's crazy math. They do math totally different now than I learned math. And I didn't go to elementary school here in the US. So I learned to do math and arithmetic a little bit differently than I think American kids did when I was in school. And then, you know, it just, now the way that they do math, forget about it. Okay, so bottom for Meg and top for Aida. So Meg said bottom first. Ooh. This is this one. 34. Shaman of the Skulls. This one is for you, Meg. So it says, in your heart, you've been asking for something different, something more, and the universe is answering your prayers. You do not need to be afraid of the changes happening or that are going to happen for you. They're part of that answer from the universe. You might feel certain because you cannot see how it is all going to work out, but know that the universe is caring for you and will provide a way to move through the transition with grace. You are not crazy to willingly enter this experience. There is nothing that you need to avoid and so much that you will gain. So that is bottom. And this one is top. And she is a pretty one. Okay, this one. You are encouraged to say yes to new opportunities and adventures, ideas, and connections, especially the ones that fill your heart with a sense of excitement, perhaps just before your mind begins to dwell on doubts and concerns, trying to talk you out of something before you even give it a chance. You can handle the unfamiliar better than most. Once you get your bearings, you'll find a way to thrive, to enjoy what you discover and experience. Let the yearning of your soul to explore the new and exciting inspire you. The unfamiliar and the unknown hold great blessings for you. Open yourself up to new horizons. So many changes right now, right? So there you go. So this was bottom, and this one was top. I hope that you guys enjoyed that. I will see y'all tomorrow. Love you guys. Mean it. Take care and be blessed.